This time, I'll remove your head myself!
You had your chance. Please!
Run, little rabbit! No escape! For the first one! Ogum is mine!
I need more time.
For the first one! Run, little rabbit! No escape!
No mana!
To me! Oriana! Open the cage! Release the beast! Give me what you promised!
I think no. I don't know more. You're too weak to do the job. I'll find someone else to do the job.
How dare you abandon me! After all!
Out of mana. Please!
Two strikes!
No mana.
Eat you!
Out of mana. Desert fire. Out of mana. Out of mana. No mana.
Soothsayer shall take pleasure in your castration!
I'm not letting you anywhere near him.
Stay still, the mother!
No, 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 no!
Oh, my dear child! Your time has come!
By the gods! Rapid fire!
Children! Eat your fill! Hard!
Take this! God's forsaken city.
And that's the mercenary. It feels totally different than anything we've made before.
Now we just have to remove that construct. I'll give that to you.
Get back!
Endless. And that makes you predictable. The end of Marraketh tyranny is nearly at hand.
Get back in your hole. Wither away. Wither away.
Madness never ends! Glorious radiance! Chaotic power! Exalted are the worthy!
Stand still!
on. This is how you survive.
And that's the Ranger. But oh yeah, there was one more thing. The mount. Check this out. Yes, you can ride a rower. While riding the rower, you can shoot arrows with no movement penalty. It's pretty overpowered. You can also use your vaulting skills to jump right off the rower's back. Once the rower doesn't have a rider, it starts attacking monsters, so he's nice to have around, even if you're not riding him. That said, if you are riding, don't get hit. If you take a heavy stun while on a rower, you'll fall off, and it takes a while to get up, so be careful. So that's what we wanted to show you today. Now there is just one more rather unfortunate bit of news. Path of Exile 2's beta is going to be delayed. We previously said that we would get the beta out on June 7th, and while I think we would be able to get the game's content ready in time, we underestimated how long it would take to get gameplay polished to a standard that we're happy with. We're still going to be doing alpha testing in June, but we're going to be delaying the beta until later in the year. I don't have an exact date for you today, but it should be towards the end of the year. In the meantime, you can still play Path of Exile 1, of course.
And that there is a small slice of Path of Exile 2.
Fire in the hole! Eat this! Fire in the hole! Eat this! Need more money! Need a sec. Easy. Fire in the hole! So the hooded one was right. They lost their minds. Fire in the hole! Break their armor! Six shot.
Druid. On Dexterity you have the Ranger or the more spear-focused Huntress. And on Dexint you have the Shadow and the Monk, which Mark is playing here. Each class has its own 3 ascendancies that let you further specialise the class in the way that only that class has access to, but they both start at the same location in the passive tree. The quest rewards you're offered on the 2 variants are tailored to the class, but of course this is PoE. You can still mix and match anything to your heart's content. Looks like we've come across the boss for this area. In PoE 2, every area of the campaign contains a boss of at least this difficulty. That's over 100 bosses to fight as you make your way through the campaign, and they all have unique mechanics to learn. As you've seen from watching Mark fighting, the melee combat in PoE 2 has a very different feel than before. We've done a lot of things to add mobility to combat. Practically every melee skill in PoE 2 has some kind of movement built into it. But the Monk in particular is a melee fighter who specialises in mobility over brute strength. So, as Mark has been playing, you might have noticed these blue markers over enemies. Mark has a skill equipped called Killing Palm. Whenever an enemy has a blue indicator over it, it means the monster has low enough life to cull with Killing Palm. Successfully executing the cull will give you a power charge. This is an important skill for the Monk, since many of his skills interact with power charges. One of the great things about the skill is that it has a built-in dash forward, which makes it much easier to target the skill at the right point when you need it. We've done a lot of work in PoE 2 to make using skills like this feel satisfying. If you're accidentally targeting slightly off the monster, the skill will automatically lock on to the cullable target, and will even do a small amount of pathfinding around obstacles. We really want to make sure that when you've got an opportunity to use the skill, nothing is going to get in your way. Once you have some power charges, you need some skills to power up. A great follow-up is Falling Thunder. Falling Thunder without a power charge just creates a relatively small lightning AoE in front of you. But do it with some power charges and it turns into a pack clearer with a large number of extra projectiles. One thing you'll notice here is that like almost every melee skill in PoE 2, Falling Thunder has a bit of extra movement built in just in case you need it. Using the skill within range and you'll do a flip in place. But use it at a larger range and your character will move forward while executing it, getting you into position without any time penalty. In PoE 2 you also get a short period to redirect your target. Notice how you can start the skill facing one way, then whip the mouse sideways to land the skill in a different direction? In order to get power charges, you're going to first need to get some lower life monsters into a cullable range. You've got a few options. If you want to charge right in, Whirling Assault is a good option. It doesn't do much damage per hit, but it covers a lot of ground. And notice how you can turn as you do it? Generally speaking, you never lose control of your character in PoE 2. If you make a turn at the right time, you can get a couple of extra hits in on the monsters, getting them into range of your cull. Follow up with a Killing Palm, then finish off the rest of the pack with your Falling Thunder. We've now entered the Vaal Mechanarium. This is the place where the Vaal built the various constructs they relied on to power their civilization.
Now this is a find! A Vaal ruin that hasn't been looted? I wonder why nobody's been in here before.
One useful feature that we've added is the ability to call in NPCs to where you are, to give you more information, help you with quest objectives, and so that you don't have to always go back to town. In this case, we'll call in Alva to find out what to do.
This mechanism, if powered with a small soul core, it could open that door. There should definitely be soul cores somewhere around here. They had to power these constructs somehow.
As Alpha said, we need to find a soul core to open this door. Let's explore. If you want to shave off some life without getting too close to some of the more dangerous monsters, a good option is Wind Blast. Wind Blast also doesn't do too much damage, but it keeps the enemies back. The closer they are, the farther they're pushed back, so it's a great option for keeping smaller but high damage enemies at bay. Note that the bigger the enemy is, the less they'll be pushed back, so trying to push back some giants isn't going to be effective. And there's the soul core. Let's get back to the door.
Is sealed.
Consider me impressed. I'll keep investigating in here. Bring me in if you find anything else.
If you need to defeat tougher enemies, it might be time to break out some of the ice skills in the monk's arsenal. Glacial Cascade creates a wave of ice that moves slowly in front of the player. It's pretty ineffective against fast-moving monsters because most of the damage occurs right at the end of the wave, and so a lot of monsters will just walk right by it. But if you can find a way to make a monster stop at just the right place, it can be very effective. In order to do that, you probably want to freeze monsters. The monk has a few different tools to do this. A fairly simple option is to get right in the monster's face with Ice Strike. Ice Strike doesn't do too much damage on the first 2 hits, but attack 3 times in sequence and you can get off a combo that has a much higher chance to freeze. Get in there with that freeze, then roll back and finish the job with a Glacial Cascade. Now, remember how Glacial Cascade had that extra damaging spike at the end? If you've hit a frozen enemy with that spike, it shatters the ice on the enemy and does a devastating amount of damage. Oh yeah, I just casually mentioned rolling back before. Did I forget to mention that in PoE 2 we added a dodge roll to every character? Just press spacebar at any time to roll. There's no cooldown, no limitations. It even has a bit of built-in pathfinding so you don't get stuck on things. When you dodge roll, you're not invulnerable. If something hits you, you're going to feel it, but most things will not hit you. That's because while rolling, projectiles and melee strikes will always miss. You'll have to roll out of the way of a slam that has AoE, but anyone swinging a sword or throwing a fireball is going to miss. Now, another really important function of the dodge roll is that it lets you cancel out of almost any skill at any time. This makes it so you don't feel like you're getting stuck doing a long animation when something is about to hit you. It really changes how skills with longer attack and cast times play, and it makes dodge roll feel like a very reliable way to avoid attacks. So, that's one way to get out of the way of damage, but the monk specializes in mobility, so it makes sense that he would have a few more. Wave of Frost is one of our new attacks with a retreat built right in. You move backwards and throw out a cold attack with a significant freeze. The great thing about this is it puts you at a good distance to follow up with Glacial Cascade and do a whole pile of damage. Hey look, another soul core. Another skill you can use to get some extra freeze is Shattering Palm. Shattering Palm is another palm strike that puts a small ice bomb on your target. Kill or deal enough damage to the target and the bomb will explode, doing some damage and a significant freeze. It's a great option against bosses where the wave of ice might not be enough to get that freeze off, but you really want to get that Glacial Cascade damage bonus.
Get back! Face your demise.
The final skill we're going to show you today is Flicker Strike. It's a monk skill now, and another skill that consumes power charges. If you've played PoE 1, you know what to expect. It's a great finisher for tough boss fights, and it looks pretty impressive too.
Face your demise.
Another door. I wonder what could be in there. In order to take down this boss, we're going to need all the tools in the monk's arsenal, especially the combo of Freeze and Glacial Cascade. If you're a PoE 1 player, You might think that you can't really rely on freeze because there's so many bosses that are immune to it, but in PoE 2 that's changing significantly. In PoE 1, freeze is a binary mechanic. An attack freezes the target or it doesn't. What this basically means is that in PoE 1 we were forced to add freeze immunity to many bosses because freeze just trivialized them. Because of that, freezing was something you only really used while pack clearing, and not something you could rely on as a core part of your build for boss fight. In PoE 2 though, all crowd control mechanics now have internal meters that allow you to build up to a freeze or stun, or whatever other CC mechanic you might be using. It's a little bit like poise from games like Elden Ring, though the meters tend to be a lot smaller than those games. When you freeze an enemy, it increases the amount of freeze you need to do another freeze, but the increased difficulty bleeds away slowly. More freeze will always let you freeze the boss more often, but this system means it will not get out of control in party play or interact badly with other CC mechanics, allowing us to let these kinds of mechanics actually work against all bosses. Blackjaw has dropped a consumable quest item, the Flame Core. It's a permanent +10 to Spirit. In PoE 2, we really want to make sure that you feel rewarded for exploration. It wouldn't be much good if we made all these awesome optional bosses if we didn't have something great to find for killing them. One of the things you might find for killing a boss is a permanent stat bonus to your character.
Your end comes. Your fate is sealed.
In order to help us with this next area, we're going to call in a sorceress. Mark's friend Octavian is going to send a friendvite, which we're going to accept, and then they can play together. The sorceress is the new intelligence-focused character in PoE 2. While the witch focuses more on occult magic and summoning, the sorceress is themed around pure elemental destruction. Let's have a look at how she plays.
All the vaunted technology of the Val, and look where it got them. Dead and buried.
This is the largest soul core I've ever seen. With this, we could power the canal systems. But it isn't charged. There There is still latent energy in this machinarium from its ancient operation. These lines in the stonework should lead to generators. You might need to find some more soul cores to spin them up, but everything looks to be in surprisingly decent condition. Maybe the golems have been maintaining it. In any case, it should still function. We'll have to remove that large core from the wall, of course, but that shouldn't be a problem.
We have some skills here that you'll probably recognize if you've played PoE 1 before, but they feel a bit different to play now. Spark is great in these tight passages since it bounces around. We've added a Pierce support gem to really allow it to hit an entire room of targets. For a more single target focused skill, Arc is a good choice. It does more damage to the first target you hit. Now, if you find yourself surrounded, it might be good to use Ice Nova. It hits all enemies around you and slows them down with chill. Just be careful. Getting up close and personal isn't the ideal place for a sorceress to be. She doesn't have the defenses of a more melee-oriented character. If you want to help with the sorceress's weak melee defense though, you could use Arctic Armor. In PoE 2, Arctic Armor is a buff that builds up as you stand still. You can see the ice crystals forming around the character. They'll drop off if you walk. When monsters hit you, they take cold damage and build up to a freeze, so it's a great defense. Just be careful. You have to be standing still for a little while to get the full effect, so trying to stutter step isn't the best strategy. Now, Arctic Armor is an ongoing buff, but did you notice it didn't reserve any mana? How does that work? Well, we were pretty sick of the fact that in PoE 1 basically every character was playing with no mana pool, so we decided to change the way that reservation works. There's a new resource in PoE 2 called Spirit. Spirit is a dedicated resource you can use for ongoing effects like Arctic Armor, Heralds, Auras, or even Minions. Everyone starts with 100 Spirit, which is enough for most ongoing effects. But if you want more than one effect, you're going to need some more Spirit. Spirit is available on mods from items and on the passive tree. But if you're willing to give up your offhand slot, the easiest way to get it is by holding a Scepter. Now, if you want to increase the cold damage you're dealing, you can use a Frost Bomb. It places a bomb on the ground that reduces the enemy's cold resistance while it's ticking down. It's a great opportunity to use some cold skills before it explodes. And speaking of cold skills, a great skill to use on monsters with the slower cold resistance is Comet. This is a new skill in PoE 2, and it hits pretty damn hard. It costs a lot of mana and has a really long cast time, but it's worth the wait. It does a devastating amount of damage. To help get you out of danger, your character moves back slightly as it casts. It's pretty hard to hit a fast-moving opponent, but it's great on tougher enemies that stand still, or even a larger pack if you're further away and can predict where they're going to move. Now, if you run out of mana casting too many of those, I guess in an emergency you could cast your free-to-cast Fireball. Where did that come from, you ask? Well, this is a great opportunity to explain the way we've changed caster weapons in PoE 2. Now, in PoE 1, caster weapons had a default melee attack that nobody used, and because they had that, they also had a bunch of attack mods that would spawn in them that were useless to a caster. In PoE 2, we wanted to clean that up, so now each staff comes with a built-in free-to-cast spell. Just put it on and spam to your heart's content. Now, this particular staff is the base type that you get right on the starting beach, and it's quite likely that you're going to outgrow it. So that's why we have a lot of staves with more utility-focused powers for casters to use. Here we have a crystal staff. It's got a pretty cool built-in spell called Unleash. Using it slams your staff on the ground, and will allow you to triple cast whatever you cast with your next spell. Now, of course, you're probably going to want to use that with something powerful, and Comet is a great option. You'll notice that Unleash is one of the few skills in PoE 2 with a cooldown. In general, we really try to avoid using cooldowns because we really hate the feeling that combat is just waiting to be able to use your next skill. But it does make sense for Unleash since it's free to cast, and it's something we want you to be using situationally anyway. Now, if you're facing something tough, you might want to try out Mana Tempest. Mana Tempest creates a circle of power in which your character literally hovers over the ground. While in the circle, your mana drains, but it powers up all of your spells. Lightning projectiles fork, beams chain further, and you'll also do a lot more damage. So with all of these skills, here's a great combo to try. First, cast Frostbomb to reduce the target's cold resistance. Then use Mana Tempest to increase your damage. Follow it with Unleash, and then triple cast the Comet to do a truly insane amount of damage.
I need more time.
This rare monster dropped an uncut gem. This is a good opportunity to talk about how skill gems drop in PoE 2. Instead of dropping specific gems, you can find uncut gems. Just right-click on them and pick whatever skill you want. The gem will come pre-leveled to the level of the area that dropped it, so it's a lot easier to change between skills in PoE 2. This time, I think it might be cool to grab one of our meta gems. Meta gems are skills that can have other skills socketed into them, changing how they work. In this case, we're going to select Cast on Shock. Now, let's equip this thing in the skill screen and choose a spell to trigger with it. I think Comet might be fun. Because Cast on Shock reserves Spirit, we'll need to first disable our Arctic armor. We have to decide if we'd rather have the extra defense or the extra offense of the Cast on Shock using our Spirit. In PoE 2, trigger gems use a system of filling up cast time on each trigger. Basically, if a skill has a short cast time, then we'll trigger it really often. If it's got a long cast time, like this Comet here, it will take a lot longer to trigger. You can see up the top left that there's a counter that says how far it is until your next trigger. And there you are. Using Cast on Shock, we'll automatically cast Comet whenever we're using our lightning skills. So we've found the generator. Time to power it up. As power is restored to the Mechanarium, all the constructs are coming back to life. We'll need to fight them on the way back to the charged Soul Core. One thing that PoE 1 players might have noticed is that this character has both ice and lightning spells. That's pretty inefficient, isn't it? It's a big no-no for most builds, because any specialization into cold or lightning isn't going to affect the other element. And generic elemental damage increases are not going to be as powerful as focusing on a single element. Well, in PoE 2 we have another major new system to introduce to solve these kinds of problems, and it starts with Weapon Swap. Now in PoE 1, Weapon Swap isn't really used much for its originally intended use case. We imagined that people were going to be swapping in and out between different weapons to deal with whatever situation they were in. People just don't do that at all, and a large reason for that is because it's really awkward to do. In PoE 2 we wanted to solve that. The staff Octavian is using here has an ice mod on it that makes it great for when he's using his ice spells. We would also like to be able to make sure that the build works just as well for his lightning spells. If Octavian equips his previous staff in his second weapon set, you can see that it appears on the character's back. Now we're going to open up the skills screen. If Octavian opens up the skill options for his lightning skills, you can see here that you can choose which weapon sets are usable with each skill. First, we uncheck set 1 from being used by his lightning skills. Then, we go through the cold skills and turn those off with his lightning weapon. Now, when we use Spark, the character will automatically switch to the lightning staff on his back, and then use the skill. When Octavian uses Ice Nova, his character automatically switches over to his ice staff before using it. Figure each skill for which set to use, or both if you don't mind which. There's a very short time penalty to switching, so it can be good to leave some skills on both sets if it doesn't matter which weapon set you're using. But we still have the problem of passives. Wouldn't it be nice if we could specialize in both cold and lightning passives on the character? Well, in PoE 2 you can. We're on the passive skill screen here, and you can see that we're close to both a cold and a lightning cluster. At the top right of the screen, you can see where we have some weapon set specific points to allocate. If Octavian holds Shift, he can allocate set 1 to the cold passives, and then allocate set 2 to the lightning passives. Now check this out. As we weapon swap, our passive tree changes from one build to the other automatically. Whenever we cast the appropriate spell, the character's passives reconfigure on the fly to the correct build for that spell. Now you can't do this with every passive on your tree. Only points granted from skill books will allow this kind of dual specialization, so you can't change from a mace-slamming warrior into a fire elementalist with the press of a button, but it certainly increases the number of options you have for builds. There's a huge number of places where the system can shine. You could augment your Dagger Shadow build with traps, or have a great curse setup on your Witch in one spec and then move to your Chaos Debuff spells with the other. It really opens up your options.
I need more time.
Another fun meta gem to try out is called Barrier Invocation. This works a little bit like the trigger gem I talked about before, but this one charges up as your energy shield is hit by monsters. I think we might like to put an Ice Nova in this one. The more energy shield you lose, the more charge builds up until the point where you're able to cast the skill you socketed instantly. Lose some energy shield, and then at just the right time invoke Ice Nova to cast all the stacked up versions in one cast. If you keep losing shield, you'll build up even more charge for even more casts, so it's a great defensive option in an emergency.
So today we're going to do a short demo of some of the content we have in this build of Path of Exile 2. We're starting here at about level 11, which is around halfway through Act 1. Right away as Jonathan plays with the graveyard, you're going to notice the massive improvements we've made to the Path of Exile engine since 3.0 was released. Environments, characters, and items all use physically based rendering, which gives the whole game a realistic look. We have new main character class models with all new animations and completely new item base types. Most of these have physics for many of the little details, which makes them a lot more awesome. We put a lot of work into updating the skill effects throughout Path of Exile. For example, when you fire a split arrow, you really feel the individual arrows because some stick in the walls and others bounce off realistically. The 4.0 campaign contains a variety of optional side quests that lead to meaningful boss encounters along the way. Very soon we're going to encounter Lachlan, an NPC who has lost his family.
My family, where are they? Isabel and the boys were only to be gone for a few minutes, but it has been, I don't even know how long. Hours at least. Days, weeks. What season is it? Stranger, I know we have just met, but I'm so worried about them. Around here, they could have fallen into a sinkhole or been choked by grave dust. Please, could you see to their safety?
The game has changed a lot more than just visually though. One of the things we have wanted to do for a really long time is to make fundamental changes to Path of Exile's skill system. The skill system in PoE is really cool and versatile. Personally, it's my favourite thing about the game, but there have always been some awkward things about it. We really wanted to find a way to address all of the shortcomings while not sacrificing even a single bit of the functionality that we already have. When you see the inventory here, you will notice something missing: all of the sockets on the items. This is because in Path of Exile 2, you no longer put gems into your items. Instead, the skill gems themselves have sockets, as you can see here, and there is a dedicated screen for socketing them. Jonathan's going to change his split arrow skill for Ice Shot and will add some support gems to it. There are some really big advantages here. For one, every single item in Path of Exile 2 can be a 6-link. This is going to cause huge changes in how players design character builds. In the past, players didn't ever want to have more than one primary attack skill because they could only have 1 or 2 6-links on a character at most. Now, it's totally viable to have multiple powerful primary attacks. The thing I'm really happy about though, is you don't have to screw around with your gems all the time when you're changing items. Check out this bow here. The socket colors you get still come from your items, but now every single bow that drops will have exactly 4 green sockets. This means that we can swap this bow for this other one we have found, and we don't have to mess around with our gems. As we swap between the bows, we can see at a glance all the DPS values for our skills updating. It's still possible to fine-tune socket colors on items when you need to, but because everything that drops has fixed sockets, it's way easier to just pick something up and put it on while leveling. For new players, another really great advantage is that it's now impossible to socket a support gem into a skill gem that it doesn't work with. For example, this multiple projectiles gem can't be socketed into Leap Slam, but you can see with all the highlighted sockets that it will work with the other bow skills. Some of you will be wondering about skills like auras. A lot of the time in the old skill system, you'd throw a few gems together in a 4-link with few or no support gems. How can you do that when you have a limited number of active skill slots? The answer is meta gems. Meta gems are like super support gems that let you put multiple actives into them. For example, we want to run a few different auras on this character. We can put this proficiency gem into the character and load it up with auras. It even lets you bind a single key to enable all of the auras at once. Trigger gems like Cast on Crit are also meta gems, so this means you can put an entire Cast on Crit setup into one gem as one of your 8 6-links. One of the things we really wanted to improve in Path of Exile 2 was our lighting system. The new PBR rendering, in addition to a much more realistic light fall-off, makes this area look significantly more awesome than what we could possibly achieve in the past.
Please make them stop. They're whispering. They're screaming. No, don't give in. You're not dead. You're still moving. You're still here.
One of the things that's really exciting about creating an entirely new campaign is that we get to apply all of our boss creation skills to early bosses as well. The first few acts of Path of Exile 1 have bosses that are some of the earliest content we ever made, and their age is really showing. This fight here is the same level as the Fairgraves fight in the original campaign, but it's a lot more advanced.
Learn to let go of your burdens.
So here we are in the hunting grounds. Now we're going to show you something that players have been requesting for a really long time. In Path of Exile 2, we finally have shapeshifting. Each shapeshift form can use any regular Path of Exile attack that makes sense. Here on the werewolf, we're using Leap Slam and Cleave. One of the other things we thought that was really important with shapeshifting is that you could just change back and forth at any time, walking around in the middle of a skill whenever, just hit the button and go. One of the things you can see in this area is the new grass tech that we have. It's done using pre-computed ray tracing. It's both way nicer looking and has better performance than what we used to have before.
I finally found the madman who hearted this.
each new class, we really try to think about how we can make combat feel different from all the others. For the mercenary, that difference is the crossbow. A crossbow is fundamentally different than a regular bow because it fires instantly instead of needing to be drawn back. This means that you need immediate feedback. Clicking the fire button should make the character shoot instantly, just like in a shooter. As soon as we experienced that, we realized that there are a lot of design lessons to learn from shooters, and so we fully embraced them. In Path of Exile 2, we have crossbows that work like sniper rifles, shotguns, and assault rifles. But in order to really get shooter-like gameplay, we wanted to go further. In Path of Exile 2, we now support WASD movement. You can now walk around in any direction independent of aiming. In fact, if this is your preferred method of gameplay, you can use it on any class, regardless of what weapon type you're using. You can change between click to move or WASD at any time. You can only hold 2 crossbows at a time, but Path of Exile 2 is all about interesting combinations of abilities, and this is where ammo skills come in. This is a burst shot crossbow, and right now I have armor piercing ammo equipped, which makes it very effective when facing a group of enemies, since it pierces right through them.
Bloody horrors!
But there are other ammos too. For a bigger, single target, it might be a good idea to switch to Incendiary. The more projectiles hit the target, the stronger the ignite, so you'll want to get up nice, close and personal with this one. If you have a bunch of targets running at you, you might want to slow them down. In this case, you could switch to Permafrost Burst Shot. Shooting a bunch of smaller enemies at range will chill them, and potentially even freeze them in place. Once you have some frozen enemies though, you can switch back to Armor Piercing. Shooting a frozen enemy with Armor Piercing Burst Shot will explode the ice, doing a huge amount of damage to all nearby enemies. Another feature crossbows have is attachments. This is a grenade launcher. As you can see, when I equip it, it appears on the underside of the crossbow. These attachments are just like skill gems, so you effectively get extra skill slots, and you can augment these with support gems, just like regular skills.
Fire in the hole!
These grenades take a while to explode, so it's a good idea to pair them with some kind of crowd control, like Permafrost Burst Shot. We have other grenades too though. This attachment is a flash grenade. It does barely any damage, but it does a huge amount of stun. It can be a great opener before you run into combat.
Surprise!
Now here's another attachment, an oil grenade. Firing one of these grenades coats the ground and nearby enemies in oil. Oil slows enemies down, so it's another useful crowd control mechanic. Now, another thing that oil can do is be set on fire. Any burning enemy or explosion will ignite the oil, causing extra burning damage. One of the problems with burst shot crossbows is that each pellet doesn't do much damage individually. This means that if enemies have armor, then it will be very effective preventing that damage. But thankfully, you can equip an additional crossbow in your second weapon set to deal with the weaknesses of your primary weapon. This is a rapid shot crossbow. Rapid shot is great for closing on enemies because you can shoot while running. In Path of Exile 2, we now have the ability to allow you to use some skills while moving. Being able to create skills like this opens up a lot of new design space and allows us to really increase the pace of combat. The armor-piercing version of Rapid Shot slowly erodes a monster's armor. Once the armor is fully broken, you can easily switch back to Burst Shot to deal much more damage. Being able to run while shooting with Rapid Shot is also great for when you want to perform a fighting retreat.
Reload!
Using permafrost ammo with rapid shot is also useful if you need to retreat. When you shoot the ground, it creates ice crystals. If you draw monsters back over these crystals, they explode, chilling the monsters. It's great if you want to set up a safe zone before pulling the next pack. Slowing enemies down can come in handy if you want to use the incendiary version of rapid shot. Using this skill requires that you charge up a little bit before it fires, but as it continues to heat up, it will do more and more damage. It has a really large clip size, so you can just keep firing and firing with it. But the other really useful feature is that when the crossbow is heated up, it adds extra fire damage to any grenade that you launch. Now I've been using explosive grenades here, but it will work equally as well with flash or oil grenades too. If you use it with oil grenades, the oil will catch fire immediately. Another crossbow type that you can find is Power Shot. This one works just like a classic sniper rifle. Use it with armor-piercing ammo and it will penetrate armor on targets, so it's a good idea to use when something's really tough.
Back down or die!
Now this skill has another interesting interaction with armor break. If an enemy has its armor broken, then your Power Shot hits a weak spot and does a huge amount of single target damage, with a bunch of extra stun for good measure.
Bullseye!
Now, the incendiary version of Power Shot is more like a rocket launcher. It does a big explosive blast at a distance. One of the really useful features of this version is that you can explode any grenades that happen to be on the ground. This combo also works really well with incendiary rapid shot. I'm going to charge up the heat on my crossbow, shoot out a bunch of grenades, and then start the fireworks with a Power Shot. The ice version of Power Shot creates frost walls at a distance. This is great for crowd controlling monsters in tight passages. The wall segments have other uses too. If they get destroyed by monsters, then they will explode, doing a small amount of damage.
Block him in!
Now, remember that burst shot combo with frozen enemies we did earlier? That works with ice walls too. Let's put burst shot back on. Now I can fill up this area with ice walls, then shoot them with armor-piercing burst shot for a huge amount of damage.
Stay light, stay alive.
Any kind of basic arrow skill can be fired while moving, with a movement penalty. This immediately gives you a lot more freedom on the battlefield. Here I'm starting each battle with a poison burst arrow to poison groups of enemies, then using a lightning arrow to arc lightning around larger packs. For even more mobility, we also have a variety of skills that involve vaulting around the battlefield too. This is Frost Escape. Using it jumps backwards and shoots a freezing arrow at the ground. Really useful if monsters close on you and you need to get away. Once you've landed, if monsters were frozen, it'd be nice to have some way to take advantage of that extra time. This is where Snipe comes in. Snipe is a skill shot that you need to charge up and release at exactly the right time. If you land the right timing, Snipe is guaranteed to produce a critical strike, and does a small AoE as well, so it's a great finisher. You can also move while shooting arrow rain skills too. This skill is Lightning Rod. It shoots an arrow into the air that sticks into the ground and does a small AoE. Once the rods are in the ground though, they attract any arcs of lightning that are nearby, causing them to explode again. This means you can stack up a bunch of lightning rods on the ground and bounce lightning between them, doing way more damage.
This is going to hurt.
Now this takes care of packs pretty well, but for bigger enemies I'd like to have something that's going to enhance my damage output too. This skill is Stormcaller Arrow. Using it sticks an arrow into an enemy. After a short period of time, a lightning bolt comes from the sky and strikes them. This has a high chance to shock them, and shocked enemies take 30% more damage from all sources. If something big walks along, it's a good idea to throw one of these at them first to enhance your damage before following up with the other combo. Now if I really want to enhance this combo, there are a couple of things I could do using our support gem system. Skills in Path of Exile are granted by items called skill gems. Each skill gem has coloured sockets in it, and these sockets are for other items called support gems. Support gems modify your skills, and it's where a huge amount of the customization of your character comes from. First I'm going to take this multiple projectile support gem. I could add it to my lightning arrow, and it would fire multiple arrows. This would increase the number of targets I can hit, but that isn't the effect that I'm after. If I add it to my lightning rod skill instead, then when I fire it, I get a nice group of rods. This means that I don't have to spend as much time setting up before I can use it with my lightning arrow combo. I might also add faster projectiles to make the lightning rods land faster too. Now next up I'm going to grab this chain support gem. Chaining causes many effects to repeat on new targets when you hit them. If I add it to my lightning arrow, it will cause the arcs that come out of lightning arrow to strike even more targets, rippling along my line of lightning rods for huge amounts of damage. Now I think we can use support gems to improve Stormcaller Arrow as well. Let's start simple. I'm going to chuck less duration on here. This will cause the lightning from the sky to strike a bit faster. Next up we have a support called Shock Proliferation. This support makes it so that any enemies shocked by the skill will also have the shock jump to nearby enemies, meaning they'll take the extra damage as well. It's just a chance to proc, so it's not going to proc on every single pack, but when it does, a pack will go down ultra quick. Another useful empowering skill is Barrage. Barrage is one of the rare cooldown skills in PoE 2. It enhances whatever your next attack is to fire 3 times. With what we have here, I think it might be a good idea to use it with Lightning Arrow. It'll generate 3 times as many lightning explosions. You could also use it at just the right moment with Snipe, or any number of other skills depending on what effect you need more of right now. It's very versatile and can be used in a range of situations. Now, even as mobile as the Ranger is, it's still very useful to slow monsters down, and a Ranger certainly has quite a few tools to do this. If you're prepared to get up close and personal, we have a skill called Electrocuting Rod. First, jump over the enemy and shoot it into them. Once the rod's in place, any lightning damage they take will build up a special electrocute gauge. Once the gauge is full, the monster is totally suppressed, allowing you to kill them easily. Now sometimes when you use electrocuting rod, the enemy dies before you get a chance to electrocute them. I think there's another support gem I could add to my lightning arrow to fix this problem. Neural overload will make it easier to electrocute enemies. If the skill it's attached to puts them over 50% of their electrocute bar, it will trigger instantly. Now this skill works really well for suppressing a single large enemy, but I'd like to improve my crowd control ability for groups as well. I'm going to add a support gem called Frozen Nexus to my Frost Escape. This makes an area of chilled ground around frozen enemies. I'll also add Deep Freeze to it as well, which will make the freezes last a bit longer. Now when I use my Frost Escape on that front enemy, others nearby are slowed down. It would also be good if I had a way to slow enemies down when they're farther away from me as well. So this would be a great time to start getting into the ranger's poison and plant-based skill set. To start with, let's have a look at Vine Arrow. This skill fires an arrow into the air that creates a small plant where it lands. The plant sends out tendrils to nearby enemies, slowing them down and poisoning them. But it does have another function too. If the plant gets further poisoned, it transfers that poison to the monsters it's attached to. Normally you would only be able to get one stack of poison on a monster at a time, but you can put as much poison as you want on this plant. You could just use the plant to slow monsters down and not worry about the poison part. But if you want to go all in on poison, this is the way to do it. Now if you do want to focus on poisons more, another useful skill is Poison Bloom Arrow. This skill creates these plant pustules on the ground. If you wait a little while, they'll explode. Just like any other plant skill, these plants respond well to poison. Shoot the Poison Burst arrow at enemies nearby and watch your plants grow more and more powerful. Poisoning the pustules causes them to do much more damage and makes them explode much faster as well. I can also add the Pierce support to Poison Burst arrow. Doing this will mean I get multiple poison bursts as it goes through each monster. We also have another skill to make a nice environment for your plants to grow. Gas Cloud Arrow. This skill shoots the ground and creates a cloud of gas that continuously poisons things inside it. Throw your plants down, then put a gas cloud on top. The constant poisoning will make them grow. Another poison-related skill we have on the Ranger is called Plague Bearer. This is a reservation skill, meaning it uses Spirit. When I enable it, I get this counter that counts up whenever I apply poison to a monster. You can see the counter on the skill increasing as each new monster is poisoned. Now I'm going to fight these monsters and make sure to poison them as much as I can to build up the counter. It does take quite a while to get the counter up to 100%, but it's worth it. Whenever I choose, I can unleash the poison in a big explosion around my character, dealing a large amount of damage. Now next up we have a classic, Rain of Arrows. It's simple. Shoot a bunch of arrows in the sky and they rain down for a short time. It's decent AoE and damage at long range. Now this skill doesn't last too long, but we can change that. It's time to introduce Frenzy Charges. Frenzy Charges are used for a variety of skills on the Ranger, but with Rain of Arrows they can be used to extend the duration.
You're mine.
How do we get some though? Here we have a skill called Sniper's Mark. Put it on an enemy and it will grant you a Frenzy Charge when you crit them. Now remember that Snipe skill from earlier? That skill guarantees a critical hit. So first we Sniper's Marked an enemy, then we sniped them. And after that, the next rain of arrows will last a really, really long time. We still have some weaknesses though. While Rain of Arrows hits enemies with a ton of arrows, each one doesn't do much damage individually. It would be nice if we had a way to break the armor on enemies so that Rain of Arrows dealt more damage. Thankfully, we have this Corrode Armor support gem, and we can put it on our Gas Cloud arrow. Corrode Armor causes poison to erode the armor on targets until it's all gone. This will significantly increase the damage that Rain of Arrows does against armored targets. Oh yeah, and one more thing about gas clouds. They can be detonated with explosions. I have an explosive arrow here. Let's check it out.
Still.
Now, because monsters and gas clouds are likely to have their armor broken, I think there's another useful combo we can do. This is an exploit weakness support. This support provides extra bonus damage to targets that have their armor broken. Perfect for what we have going on here. You can see the spirit bar above the mana here. On the skill screen, you can pick the composition of your army. This is a level 2 area, so I can only afford one other minion. I'll pick a sniper for now.
You can stay in the back with me.
When minions die, they'll be revived automatically so long as no other minion has died recently. So before your next battle, all your minions will come back to life. You can also order your minions around with a dedicated button. Tell them to move to a specific location, attack a specific enemy, or even open a chest or door for you.
Open that.
We also have temporary minions. This spell is called Unearth. If it kills a monster or if it hits the corpse of a monster, it creates these bone constructs. They can't take many hits and have a limited lifetime, but you can build up a real army with these. While my minions are attacking, I'm going to use some debuffs on the monsters too. The first one I'm going to use here is Contagion. If a monster dies with Contagion, it spreads to nearby enemies. Each time it spreads, the damage increases, so it's a good idea to try and keep the infection going. If any corpses are infected when you summon a minion from them, the minion will be infected as well. Each time they hit an enemy, they'll continue infecting them. It's nice to have an army of infected scorpions on your side. I also have another Chaos debuff called Essence Drain. This one does even more single target degen. If the monster is infected with Contagion at the same time, then the Essence Drain will spread as well. This can turn into a real plague of destruction. Another minion type I can summon are zombies, but they require a corpse.
These will do nicely.
They don't come back to life if they die, but they're fairly tough and can bolster your minion numbers. Many minions also have command skills. I can order my sniper to deploy a gas arrow on the battlefield to get some damage over time. Now I'm going to summon a skeletal arsonist. They can throw little fire grenades, but they also have a command skill that can detonate your own minions that are low on life. When you see the red indicator, use the skill and the minion will go boom. It's particularly nice on these bone constructs because they expire quickly anyway. So, let's take all these tools we've found and fight the boss of this area, the Carrion Crone. So, that's how many minions you can get at level 2. But let's see what minion gameplay looks like at a higher level. This is a level 30 area. I want to try a different group of minions. I still have my trusty warriors, but there's a lot of different types to choose from, like brutes for stunning or ice mages for freezing, and most of them come with their own special abilities or command skills. For now, I'd like a couple of storm mages to shock enemies, a cleric to heal and revive my minions, and a bunch of reavers as well. Reavers do high damage, and you can also enrage them before battle. This slowly kills them, but my cleric should be able to keep them alive. While my minions are attacking, I can use channeled skills like Bone Storm, which creates a devastating volley of sharp spikes. The Storm Mage has a useful ability if lots of your minions die. He can summon a lightning storm to strike the location of every dead skeleton in your army. Just like that. We also have a type of skill called Offerings. These let you impale one of your skeletons on a big spike of bone in order to buff all of your other minions. The one I've just used here is called Pain Offering. It makes all of my other minions faster and deal more damage. After the battle, we have some extra corpses. We don't want those to go to waste. Profane Ritual consumes a corpse to create a power charge, which can power up some of my other spells. If I use them to summon zombies, I can create super zombies, which are more powerful. You also don't need a corpse to summon them. I can also use power charges to channel Bone Storm. If I do that, it adds a devastating AoE. In PoE 2, even non-boss monsters can be pretty devastating, like this Faradin Impaler. There's a wide variety of abilities and is pretty tough to defeat. But maybe I can put the body to a better use. This is a Bind Spectre gem. Using it, I can take the body of any enemy and capture its spirit so that I can keep it as a minion. Any monster can be captured, but the spirit cost depends on how powerful the monster is. It takes a lot of spirit for such a powerful enemy, so I'll have to unsummon a lot of my other minions, but it certainly seems like it might be worth it. If the Spectre dies, just like any other minion, it will respawn after a short time.
Another caravan from an opposing tribe called the Faradun. There's a set of large ancient gates blocking the progress of the caravan through a desert pass, so you're being sent through the Traitor's Passage to unlock them.
We shall wait here, Jingak. But the military carts have departed for the gates. Make haste!
Path of Exile 2 is a lot more than just new acts. We want combat to feel both brutal and responsive, even at low levels. We're ensuring that each weapon type has unique and different mechanics. Each weapon class feels different to play, and today we're going to start by demonstrating the new Spear weapon class. Spears are a weapon class favoring mobility with both melee and ranged attack options. To that end, each spear will grant you at least one mobility skill.
In this case, the spear comes with both an engage and disengage skill. When you engage, it increases your melee damage for a short time, and that really encourages you to be mobile during combat. One of the skills we're using here is called Whirling Slash. When you use Whirling Slash, it creates a sandstorm that grows in size each time you use the skill. When you leave the sandstorm, it explodes, dealing damage to nearby monsters. A great way to do that is to use the disengage skill, which makes you fly backwards and throw projectiles. In PoE 2, each area's mini-boss is a much more substantial fight with interesting mechanics. You'll be able to find at least one mini-boss in each area of the game. One thing I love about this boss in particular is that it destroys the ceiling when it slams the ground, letting in more light. Clever players will notice that if they're standing in the light, then they're not going to have any rocks falling on their head. The rapid assault skill that we're using against this boss does 3 rapid stabs, followed by a 4th stab that deals more damage and can stun, if you're willing to commit to a long attack time. While developing the skills for Path of Exile 2, we were really thinking a lot about designing skills that could be cancelled early to dodge, or you can commit to the full attack for maximum damage. One of the skills we're using here is called Spear Field, which creates an area of spears coming out of the ground that impale monsters who walk into them, causing them to bleed. As the monsters move towards you, they take damage, so using your mobility skills as a way to move away from them is a great strategy here. In Path of Exile 2, we've invested a lot in our animation system. I'm sure you're noticing the animations are looking a lot better than they did in PoE 1, but there's also a lot of subtle detail, like characters having different run animations depending on how fast they're moving. When we use a Quicksilver Flask here, you can see the character changes to a sprinting animation. Now that we've arrived at the Ancient Gates, we're going to show you another of the new weapon classes in Path of Exile 2, crossbows. Crossbows are special in that they grant attack skills implicitly. This particular crossbow grants Power Shot, which is a high damage single target attack. In order to modify what Power Shot does, you're going to need to equip bolt skill gems, which change the type of bolts that are loaded into the crossbow. Here we've got 3 different bolt skills that the character can switch between depending on the situation.
Armor-piercing bolts. Incendiary bolts.
Permafrost bolts can be used to disrupt packs of enemies to prevent them from closing in on your position. You can then follow up with armor-piercing bolts to do plenty of damage.
Outsider, join me in battle!
In this area, we're helping Asala, leader of the Ardura, to open the Ancient Gates and let the caravan through.
Armor-piercing bolts.
Because the bolt types are the skill gems, support gems that are added to them will modify whatever the skill is that you're using. Here we're going to add multiple projectiles to our incendiary bolt.
Permafrost bolts. Continue the assault. Incendiary bolts.
Slay them all!
Permafrost bolts. Armor-piercing bolts. Permafrost bolts. Incendiary bolts. Armor-piercing bolts. Permafrost
Path of Exile 2, we're doing a lot more interesting things with monster packs. Here you can see some of the monsters patrolling around.
Armor-piercing bolt. Permafrost bolts. Incendiary bolts. Armor-piercing bolts. Permafrost bolts. Armor-piercing bolts. Permafrost bolts. Incendiary bolts. Armor-piercing bolts.
Now we're coming to another example of a Path of Exile 2 mini-boss, L'Im the Impaler.
Armor-piercing bolts. Incendiary bolts. Armor-piercing bolts.
The boss has dropped another type of crossbow, a siege crossbow. This crossbow grants the siege cascade skill. The skill is also modified depending on what type of bolts you're using.
Permafrost bolts. Incendiary bolts.
Onwards! Give these demons no cause. Faradun has fallen to corruption, and their
Incendiary
eyes
bolts.
gleam with madness.
Armor-piercing bolts. Permafrost bolts. Incendiary bolts.
We tried to add a lot more little details to combat in Path of Exile 2. You might notice that the monsters who die while burning have charred corpses. We really want to make sure that there's a feeling that as you leave the battlefield, there's clear evidence of what combat took place there.
Permafrost bolts. Armor-piercing bolts. Permafrost bolts. Incendiary bolts. Armor-piercing bolts. Permafrost bolts. Incendiary bolts. Armor-piercing bolts. Incendiary bolts. Armor-piercing bolts. Permafrost bolts. Incendiary bolts.
The gate mechanism has been destroyed. We must
Incendiary
press
bolts.
on.
Permafrost bolts. Incendiary bolts. Permafrost bolts. Incendiary bolts. Armor-piercing bolts.
This is the Perennial King, the leader of the Faradun. His goal here is to prevent you from catching the caravan at any cost.
Armor-piercing bolts.
Outsider, we fight.
escape! Quickly! He conjures the very sands against us!
This madness has gone on long enough. The king is not the man I once knew. And sand swallow me if I do any more to enable him. You plan to continue your pursuit, yes? You will not catch him. Not without me.
We cannot follow through the raging sands. Let us return to the caravan and question this defector.
This is the Ardura caravan, your town in Act 2.
I am Asala, the Sekima of the Ardura. I care not where you came from, nor what caste you might have been there. All that matters is that you have shown yourself capable in battle, Jingak. Remain a friend to the Ardura, and you shall have nothing but respect from us. From what your shade has told us, the situation is dire. This Balbalic will live or die based on her usefulness in pursuit of the seed of corruption. Ask her what questions you will, then we, Ardura, will decide her fate.
You need not trust me. You will see the truth of my information soon enough. I ask nothing of you. Only that you do what you know is right.
One of the things we really wanted to do in Act 2 was to use the mobility of the caravan to allow the player to choose how they explore the act. Here you're given 4 options on how to proceed.
There is a tribe of lost men that inhabits the Mastodon Badlands. They worship the bones of those long ago beasts, and that faith has given rise to powerful tasks that can somehow call on storms and strike enemies with lightning. The king wishes to steal these objects of worship and use their lightning in war. Do what you must.
Though events demand you tread upon a valley of the dead, do not do so flagrantly. Keep your presence light, cleanse what corruption you can, and we shall skirmish with the Faradun to protect your flank.
Once you've picked your destination, the caravan will travel to that area and come to a stop so that you can disembark and go on your quest. Because we just got the Storm Spear skill as a quest reward, now would be a great time to switch back to spears and use some ranged abilities. Storm Spear fires a lightning projectile which splits on contact. The other skill we're using here is called Blazing Lance. Blazing Lance creates a trail of fire from the ground, dealing damage over time. However, if you're willing to stand in place for long enough, you can throw a second spear that will fan the flames for much more damage. We've just found a unique spear. It's called Devata's Wind. This spear has an extra modifier that synergizes really well with Storm Spear. When you disengage, you get 2 additional projectiles on your projectile skills.
but left on their own, men will always seek to take their place.
Criminals! Your sentence is to be hanged from the neck until dead. Let your souls feed the first ones, and your bodies feed the land.
The only result is pain and death.
The demon is escaping! Kill her!
Get them! Only 20 years since Kitava fell, and already corruption spreads like a plague through these shattered lands. Wretched malevolence lurks in the shadows. It is our calling to put it to an end. It must be done if Wraeclast is to survive. Among ancient ruins, evil grows once more. The seed of corruption advances, spreading dread and despair. We must give chase. These sands hide countless secrets. 3,000 years of dormant malevolence. We must hunt down the seed and put an end to this madness. If Wraeclast is to survive.
Was destroyed, I traveled, searching for answers. Everywhere I went, the same divine devastation. It must end. I will end it. And no exile will stop me! world will be reborn. No
danger lurks around every corner. What happened to my forest? Prowler! Freeze!
Madness. Famine and plague besiege us. The very earth is being poisoned. The Count's men, once our protectors, have turned on us. And now, they come for me.
Oh, yes, get out of here!
I must be the one to face this nightmare.
No noose this time. I'll remove your head myself!
But I need not do it alone.
I've lived in this forest all my life. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that a ranger must never miss. A beast will hunt you, but it is the cruelty of man I fear.
I'll take your finger!
There is no truly escaping the Count's justice.
Your sentence is to be hanged from the neck until dead. Let your souls feed the first ones, and your bodies feed the land. After her!
This exile has changed me. No more running. No more fear.
You won't get away this time.
I will put an end to this madness.
Are you ready to sacrifice? Sacrifice everything to become the savior.
I will.
Do you have the strength to sweep aside this world and build it anew?
I must.
Path of Exile 2 is an upcoming action RPG developed and published by Grinding Gear Games. The game is a direct sequel to the highly popular Path of Exile, a free-to-play ARPG known for its deep mechanics, expansive skill trees, and complex itemization. Path of Exile 2 introduces a brand new 7-act campaign, separate from the original game's story. Set 20 years after the events of Path of Exile, the new campaign will present fresh characters, lore, and regions to explore, while still being deeply interconnected with the original game's world of Wraeclast. The sequel will feature 19 entirely new Ascendancy classes, advanced specializations of the base classes, offering fresh combinations of abilities and playstyles. While the core classes from the original game will return, these new ascendancies will bring expanded customization options. Path of Exile 2 overhauls the game's skill gem system, allowing gems to be socketed directly into the skill tree. Support gems are now incorporated into active skills, which significantly reduces micromanagement and provides more flexibility when building characters. This also opens up deeper customization, as players can stack unique combinations of skills and modifiers. One of the most noticeable upgrades in Path of Exile 2 is its new graphics engine, providing visually stunning environments, more realistic character models, and improved animations. The lighting and physics systems have been upgraded to create a more immersive and visually dynamic experience. Each character will have new animations for movement, combat, and skill use, making the gameplay more fluid. Weapons and armor will move more realistically, and enemies will have more detailed death animations. Weapon types now have unique attack animations and playstyles. For example, bows will feature new animations and charge mechanics for more impactful shots, and shape-shifting abilities will be introduced, allowing players to transform into creatures during combat. Like the first game, Path of Exile 2 will feature intense and strategic boss fights. The game's new campaign will introduce fresh bosses, each with unique mechanics and stages that require players to adapt and strategize. One of the unique aspects of Path of Exile 2 is its shared endgame with the original Path of Exile. Both campaigns lead into the same Atlas of Worlds endgame system, allowing players to seamlessly transition between both games without losing their characters, progress, or loot. Path of Exile 2 will build upon the deep and complex itemization system of its predecessor, offering even more unique items, crafting mechanics, and gear synergies. The developers are committed to providing players with endless possibilities to fine-tune their builds. Path of Exile 2 will continue to emphasize its strong multiplayer experience, allowing players to team up for campaign missions, endgame activities, and various co-op challenges. PvP systems are also expected to be further refined. Path of Exile 2 will maintain the same free-to-play business model as the original, with microtransactions strictly limited to cosmetic items and non-gameplay affecting content. This approach has helped the game maintain a large and dedicated player base. Path of Exile 2 expands upon its predecessor in nearly every way, with a brand new campaign, a deep skill system, advanced graphics, and technical improvements. With Grinding Gear Games' dedication to delivering a highly replayable and complex RPG experience, the game is set to be one of the most anticipated releases in 2024 for ARPG fans. Whether you're diving into the new 7-act story or exploring the shared endgame, Path of Exile 2 aims to provide an enriched, next-level ARPG experience. The game will be released on November 15th, 2024 on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X and Series S. Now you can enjoy the screenshots without any interruption. Enjoy!